everybody. Welcome back to Men Need to Be Heard. It is Dan, and I got a fun one for you today, although he is an attorney. We won't hold that against him. So we're going to be talking about probably the biggest thing I hear about from you guys, my listeners, which is dealing with crap in family court. And my guest is an expert on that, and we're going to talk about how you can survive it without losing your shirt and probably your sanity as well. So we're going to jump right in. Let me bring him on. He is my friend, Larry Demarco. Larry, welcome to the show.
Dan, thank you for having me on your program. It's an honor to be here.
I am so glad you agreed to come on. We've chatted many times behind the scenes. You're doing some amazing work, and we'll get into that. But I really want to delve into some things. But before we do, how about you tell the audience a little bit about yourself, whatever personal information you want to share.
Yes, I am a father of two. I have a 22-year-old. With his mother, I went through the family court system, and I have an 8-year-old with my wife, my current wife, and we have a strong relationship. I have a strong relationship with both children. The family court system was so traumatic in so many different ways. I was only saved by the fact that I was a practicing lawyer, which enabled me to survive. So they messed with the wrong guy. So now I am here to talk to you, Dan, and share with your listeners why they're not going to want to mess with you after we're done.
I'm laughing, Larry, because you triggered a memory for me of my divorce attorney, who was awesome. Her name was Karen. She was fantastic. And she used to make fun of lawyers all the time. But one of the things she always said is the worst representative is a lawyer who thinks he knows what he's doing handling his own case. She used to say that all the time. And it's funny because I self-represented many times. She would tell me, like let's say it was child support modification. She goes, "You don't need me for this. Why would you pay me $400 an hour? You got this. Go handle it." And I loved her for that because she was one of the few honest ones out there that wasn't trying to rack up fees. But yeah, she was brutal on other lawyers. So you kind of made me chuckle with what you were saying because, as an attorney, now were you a family law attorney before you went into it, or were you in another area of practice?
I was interested in becoming a family law lawyer because I wanted to help people who were in this time of crisis. And then I realized that the system itself is broken,
Mm-hmm.
and that people could not afford what a lawyer wants to be paid hourly for a lawyer to do everything the way I saw the system designed.
Mm-hmm.
So I learned how to be one, and then I said, forget it, I'm never going to do it.
Again, I'll go back to Karen. She said the really good attorneys don't want anything to do with family law. They really don't. And she was the exception, I guess, because she was fantastic. So
Good.
is that what kind of drew you into this, though, was your divorce? Because you said you weren't in family law, but now you're helping people through family law. Is that kind of what navigated you towards that? Was your own divorce, or was there something else?
Yeah, it was a separation. We were not married. So it wasn't the divorce. Then I got married and got divorced. So I have been divorced. I can talk about that too.
Mm-hmm.
But it was the trauma through the system or how much worse the system made what didn't have to be bad, is what brought me in. And I suppose I would call myself a social worker in family law
Okay.
that talks about the law. So that's how I want people to think of me. But I was a seasoned litigator. So when I coach or when I teach, I'm like a law professor because I'm not your lawyer. I can't give advice,
Right.
but I can educate you to protect yourself. So that's the hat I'll be wearing as a social worker
Yeah,
who
and
knows the law.
I guess we should put that clarification out there. None of this is legal advice. Larry is not representing you. He's just giving his opinion and education to help you out. Go find your own attorney in your state to represent you. He can't do that. How's that? Was that good for a
It's good. This may cut off a future question, but I don't recommend people to self-represent because of, the emotion that's
Oh,
involved and
let's.
how desperately you need a second person to hear and filter some of what you have to say. So I tell people that don't have two nickels to rub together that you can self-represent, and I can teach you how. But for everyone listening at once, I do not recommend that you self-represent. I do recommend something that's called a limited scope lawyer, which every family lawyer should be, and very few are, which is the problem with the system, but we can get into that
I
when
want
you
to
ask.
let's. This is kind of going off our plan, but I want to dive into that a little bit because it is something I hear from guys all the time. As I talked about, I self represented myself probably 80, 85, maybe even 90% of the time. Where I brought her in is when there was a trial or when it was like really serious. And the reason is I knew my limitations. The thing I always tell guys is that if you want to self represent, you better be prepared to spend 60 hours a week learning the law. And I did. I mean, I night after night for months, years even, learning the law because you need to know the law. To the point, the actual family court judge, you'll love this one, Larry. I was up against the guardian ad litem on a case, and her and I are going back and forth doing our presentation to the judge. And he looked at her and he goes, "He knows the law better than you do. Sit down and shut up." I about fell over. And I was like, that's like one of the highlights of my life, right? But to your point, the reason I was able to do that is I put all the time in that I needed to. One and two, I was an emotional robot. There were no emotions. I called myself the Terminator. And my attorney, Karen, said that. She goes, "I've never had a client that can do what you do because good, bad, anywhere in between, you don't show emotion, right?" And that helped her. And I would only bring her in, like I said, because where my limitations were, I don't know where to object properly, right? So I might allow evidence in that shouldn't have been in, or whatever, right? So let's kind of explore this a little bit because I want to take advantage of your knowledge on this. If someone does want to represent themselves, we're saying you should get an attorney, and I agree with you on that. But if you decide, for whatever reason, you're going to, what would be, what would advice would you give to someone like that that they really need to do?
Dan, I wouldn't really speak like this except for this intro that you just gave me when you said a self rep needs to spend about 60 hours a week learning the law. So you're stealing well, you're not stealing my thunder. God bless you. You're amplifying it because what I tell people is that if you want to self-represent, I need about 50 or 60 hours from you
Mm,
total, total. Because here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you 12 hours of me speaking, where what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you, or I'm going to tell you the information that a lawyer learned in law school about family court. And I do this in something that I call the Family Court Custody Bootcamp.
okay.
So I break down through my curriculum what I had in law school and what the percentage of it is that I need for family court only and to be able to represent myself.
Mm-hmm.
In that 10 to 12 hours, I give you reference material that if it's applicable to you or if you need to go there, here's about another 20 hours divided by topics.
Okay.
So that initial, rather than having to spend 60 hours to learn everything and figure out what you need to learn, I have screened, researched, and brought that to you
Okay.
in in summary, effective fashion. So that's the program.
Mm,
Then, um, I also talk about what I think you can do on your own and when to bring in the lawyer and how to regulate your emotions, I do give a crash course in evidence so that if you do not have Dan, what do you think? 2,500 bucks for that full day hearing that the
Oh,
lawyer may charge you?
back in the day. I think it's more than that now. I mean, I'm
Well, it
here.
might, yeah, it's funny that you say that. I'm dating myself how long
I
ago
was gonna
that
say,
I went.
because I mean, my attorney Karen was top level. This is how far back I was. She was 400 an hour. I've interviewed a divorce attorney like David Pizarro. I don't know if you know him. He's charging 800 to 1,000 an hour. And don't forget, guys, if you're hiring an attorney, it's not just while they're in the courtroom. You're going to pay for the travel time, the phone calls, the prep time. You're going to pay all of that. 2,500 would be a bargain right now for a full trial or
Yeah.
let's say a 3 hour session. You're probably looking 5 to 10 grand somewhere in there.
It's funny that you say that. I have to update my numbers because this is what I went through. I have a 22-year-old, so I went through 20,
It's
20
been a
years.
while, right?
It has. So, but the point is, what I did was I replicated my experience, I replicated my education, and I can't talk about this without also telling you that right now, for everyone listening to my voice right now and going back maybe a year, because generative AI exists, you have an opportunity to do this a little bit more safely, more inexpensively, and more effectively because those magical engineers who brought to us ChatGPT, the power behind that, I can't overstate. In
Really?
fact, I can't
So I
overstate.
got to ask you on this, Larry, because again, you're fascinating me with that. So I use ChatGPT for a lot of things, right? Like when I make my videos, I generate my scripts, I dump them in there and say fix it so it sounds reasonable, right? I've heard good and bad regarding law. I've heard very good, in fact. Like if you need, let's say, to file a motion of dismissal or something like that. And in a particular case, I'm thinking of the person said he needed to file a motion of dismissal and he was pro se, and ChatGPT did it for him, and it was damn near perfect, right? But I've also heard the other side where it will screw up, and I live in fear because you know as well as I do, all it takes is one mistake and your case will get thrown out. I always tell guys, if you're going to represent yourself, you damn well better know what I's need to be dotted and what T's need to be crossed. Because if a judge finds a T that he thinks should be crossed and isn't, he'll throw your case out. Right? So I live in fear of AI for that because I see how it screws up as well. But you're saying overall it's pretty good?
No, it's not pretty good.
Okay.
It's not, it's fantastic. It's beyond,
Really?
I cannot praise it enough.
Okay.
And I want to validate every word you just said. But you can't say, will chat make a mistake is the wrong question. The question is, will you make more or less mistakes with it,
Ah, great.
without it?
Okay.
That's the proper
I love it.
analysis.
I love it.
Because I am not backing off that you need a lawyer to proofread potentially or periodic evaluations. You got to pay that David Pizarro or a Larry Demarco or someone to proofread what chat does because they have that 3-year law degree plus anywhere from 1 to 40 years experience to know how to check what chat does efficiently. So when I see something, I have that instinct to be
Amazing.
able to
Yeah.
say this is right, this is wrong. So, but think of what. So, you went through. Let's say I want to imagine, Dan, that you went through and you were yourself rep before chat came out, and you mentioned, you knew it was a full-time job. You had
Larry,
to sit
Larry,
down.
I went through it before there was an internet, okay?
So look, yeah. So look, you said it's a full-time job.
It is.
You said
It was.
60. Let's say you
Yeah.
meant 40 because if you had a job and you can work 80 hours, it's an idea of what the average
Right.
self-rep goes through.
Right.
But you don't have to do that now because now chat will do. You can describe to chat what you would spend the next 20 hours or doing, and it'll break it down in one. So that's the
That yeah,
benefit.
that's where I could definitely see that. Like I used to spend hours on Westlaw, right, researching cases and stuff like that, which is tedious as hell, as you know. And that's what you one of the things you pay a lawyer to do. And actually, they don't even do it; they have their associates do it, but or their paralegals. But that's where I could see AI could be, oh my God, a benefit, right? And save you a ton of money. Because if you can get to the point where you can put the case together, to kind of keep it general, and then send it to the attorney, let's say you're doing a filing for custody, you could put the whole thing together and say to the attorney, okay, make this quotes legal, Because the other thing that you mentioned, they have the experience and all that, the education. But the other thing is they know the judges. And this is something I've heard from many divorce attorneys, which is every judge is different. And if you know their unique things that trigger them, it can help you or hurt you.
So you just anticipated another part of a
We're
module in
great minds think
practice.
alike, right?
Well, Dan, what you did was you gave yourself a law school education, the slow and hard way, like an old school hard worker. But so what I explain is that your lawyer really is not a rocket scientist. It's not a surgeon.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an engineer. Lawyers deal with common sense, and they're lobbyists
Mm-hmm.
because they know the judge. That turns, the lawyer who pays his bar dues, his bar association dues, who serves on the committee to elect judges, who donates to judges' campaigns,
Mm-hmm.
who has lunch with the judges, and therefore can afford to charge $800 an hour. You are not buying legal advice. You are buying a lobbyist and that influence that you didn't have your whole life to gain yourself. So the judge is going to give it to the lawyer, and he knows the lawyer is charging you for that influence. So that is always necessary. And if you can't afford it, you do the next best thing. And I have a whole module on that type of relationship with your lawyer and how to check for hidden biases, which is another long story. But thank you again for sending me these lob balls, Dan, to be able to talk about the program.
And I'm not even trying. That's the funny
I know.
part about it is it's like right. But I've been through this enough myself and work because I coach guys through family court and tell them how to talk to their attorneys and here's things you need to ask them and stuff like that. And so I get it from that perspective. And it's one of the things that I think guys struggle with and why I like them to use courses like yours is even if you're represented by an attorney, you should use that course because attorneys are not infallible, right? They're human beings. They make mistakes, and you can save yourself from a whole lot of trouble if you know the law or rules of evidence or whatever. There were times, again, Karen and I had a great relationship, but her rule was don't say anything to me in court unless I ask you, right? Because she didn't want to be distracted, and I totally respected that. But we had a legal pad right in front of us. And she would say to me, if you want to bring up a point, write it on the legal pad. That was the way we worked. So there were times that, because she's focused on whatever, something came in and I'm like, oh, wait a minute, that's not right. And I would write it on the legal pad and it would help her. And we made a hell of a team, right? It cost me 400 an hour when I used her. Like I spent six figures with her, worth every penny though. But I could have spent 500,000 instead of 100,000, right? Because one, I learned the law, but two, I built that relationship. And that's why I say to guys to if you have an opportunity to use a course like yours, you need to take it because you are your own best advocate. The best attorney in the world still doesn't know what you know as far as your particular case. They can't. You live it, they don't. And you're one client of potentially dozens, if not hundreds, right? So that's why I always say to guys use these courses, learn the law, learn all the aspects of it. Doesn't mean you need to become an expert, but it will help you. And that's my advice that I give to guys primarily. But I would give it to a woman who asked me too. What other things beside that would you mention to guys that you think are important if they're considering one either representing themselves or looking at hiring an attorney? Say,
Well, just to double up on your point, I call the course paralegal training because paralegals often know as much about forms, filings, crossing T's and dotting I's. They often know more
they know
than
more.
the lawyer does.
Yeah.
What a lawyer has the right to do is pass the bar, and the bar means the bar of the court, and approach the judge to present evidence on the behalf of a third party.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't need that law degree, that passing the bar exam to do for yourself because you actually do know more. A lawyer spends maybe 5 to 10 hours tops because you can't afford more to prepare for your case. But you've been living your whole case your whole life.
Right.
So, Dan, thank you for making that point. So, I call the program a paralegal training where I teach you everything that you need to do to get across what's inside your own head and then be that most effective advocate. So, if you take that with, and it's funny, Dan, the other thing that you said is 85 to 90%. I advertise, and I don't, I mean it. I advertise I will save you not 85 to 90% of your fees because I want them to do what you do, what you did.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to train you faster so that you're only putting up 10 hours a week instead of that 50 or 60
Right.
or 5, because then you're going to spend the rest of the time not learning the law, but applying the law to the facts of your case. Now, to your question. Your question is, what else would I advise people other than, start with ChatGPT? The other thing I want to tell people is the other thing that I've done with my program is I have taken the summary of every page, taken the summary of every video that I've referred to, or the transcript, excuse me. I've taken the transcript and asked ChatGPT to change this transcript into an article,
Mm-hmm.
and I uploaded probably 400 or 500 pages worth of advice into ChatGPT. And I say, you answer the question first. And then when people start talking about their own forms and their own jurisdiction, you go outside to the internet and supplement what I didn't train you. So
Mm-hmm.
it's the best of both worlds. And something generative AI is for someone who hasn't used it, I call it a wizard. If the internet is this huge data-based encyclopedia where you can type a search and then boom, you pulled off the shelf the playbook or the rule book that you're looking for, but then you have to read the rule book.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the internet. Then came generative AI. And what ChatGPT and all those other generative AI devices are is now you're going to ask the question, but then you're going to ask for the answer. You're not asking for where can I find the book on this. You're going to say, don't just be the book and pull off the data shelf. I want you to be a wizard who is then going to summarize and explain everything I need to know and teach me how to tell me how to think, what to think about
Mm-hmm.
what's in that document based upon the facts that I'm uploading and presenting to you. That's how powerful this thing is. However, this wizard is autistic and will give you more information than you want.
That.
And sometimes, if it doesn't know, it won't be honest with you, and it'll pretend it knows, and that's called a hallucination.
Yeah.
And that's
It's.
that's the part that you say that you don't that you're cautious about, and for that part, you actually can guide against it if with the right prompts and questions
There
with
you go.
experience. But I'm
Yeah.
not going to get into that. We don't have time.
Yeah. I mean, it's again. I wish it had been around back in my day. It was. I started in 1995. The internet was just out. AOL. Right. It was all dial-up. I did have access to Westlaw, which a lot of people don't, or didn't then. I don't know how it is now. And I spent night after night just reading cases, reading the law, reading books and stuff on how to present evidence because it didn't exist back then, right? It was this mystical thing that was out there. And I self educated. But I also knew my limitations. And what's beautiful about AI is when you know the limitations, it can help guide you through them. The only thing, again, that I would always caution people is if you're going to put in a motion for whatever, have a lawyer look at it because you just never know. Don't just file them. I see the mistake I see so many guys make, and I had one a few months back. He put in a motion on custody, and he didn't even send it to me to look at. I'm not a lawyer, okay? But I will look at him and go, you need to go talk to a lawyer, but here's a couple things I noticed. And he blew his whole case. I mean, blew it because it was so bad. And I'm like, when he sent it to me finally, he said, "Oh, the judge ruled against me. I can't believe it." I said, "Send me what you put in," and I went, "Oh my God!" Right?
Yeah.
Because it was all emotion. And let's touch on that briefly. So, when you're doing things like that, another benefit to AI is it doesn't have emotion. Right? It's going to give you facts, not feelings. And I see so many guys that are self-representing and to be honest, some attorneys that just focus on feelings, and judges generally don't care about feelings. Or if they do, and it got with regard to guys, they look at it in a negative way, right? Mom who's screaming and yelling is fighting for her children. Dad screaming and yelling, he's a controlling abuser. That's the facts. That's what they're going to view. What's your thoughts on like emotion? How can, without spending it, because we could spend three
No,
hours on that, but
I
yeah.
understand your question. I can be brief. So what you actually have to do is you have to do any type of argument or motion or factual summary, you have to do twice. So here's what I recommend. Here's maybe a page from the Family Court Custody Bootcamp um, advice. You brainstorm and you say, you talk about, you get a mic and you
Mm-hmm.
talk about the whole thing, everything you feel, or you talk about what happened in your perspective. And then you have a summary document of everything. I
Mm-hmm.
say data dump. Just throw it all out there and cover everything that you think is important. Save it into a Word document, upload it, and then say, turn this into an article, shorten it, put spelling, grammar, paragraph structure in it, and give it back to me. Then you upload it, save it,
Mm-hmm.
upload it again. Now, make this factual, take out all emotion
Mm-hmm.
from this language, and I want you to do complete non emotional language in this summary and instead make it neutral. Assume this is from dad's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Now include something that includes what is likely to be a third party perspective based upon what I just described.
Mm-hmm.
Result, download, save, upload. Now, I want you to translate this into child centered language. Rewrite this from the perspective of my child or children. I was talking about me. I data
Right.
dumped and brainstormed about me. Now, this case has nothing to do about me. It has to do about the best interest of a child. Translate this, rewrite this in what the child is seeing. Take me and take my ex and anything negative about either of us out of the equation. Look at the factors of best interest in my state and rewrite this summary for language that I could use later. That is words of wisdom, a
That
gold nugget right there for everybody.
Larry, I cannot stress enough how valuable that is, right? Because, again, I'm using myself because I know my experience, but I've seen it with other guys. The biggest struggle is getting to that perspective, the quote unquote child perspective, right? And I try and teach that to the guys that I coach, which, again, I'm more of their mentor, their sounding board. So instead of paying your lawyer $400 an hour to vent on you, vent on me, and then I say, all right, go talk to your lawyer like this. I didn't have that, right? So the ability to use a system like ChatGPT, or there's a million of Grok, there's a whole bunch of them, something like that, and delve in and then eventually get it to the point where, like you said, put this in a quote unquote child's perspective. Then when you're putting your motion in, that's going to hit the judge right between the eyes, right?
That's the other thing that you asked me. So to talk about those motions, what I would do if I was doing a motion, the first thing you do is, hey, Mr. Chat GBT, or I now want you to be Judge Wapner. Let's pick a judge's name, or oh,
You just dated yourself, my friend.
yeah, exactly, right. Who is it now? Judy.
Judge,
There's so many of them.
actually,
Well,
Judge Judy's awesome, but that's beside true.
beside the point, let's
Yeah.
say put your judge hat on. I want you to be judge.
Mm-hmm.
And I want you, before I talk to you, become aware, do a search in the internet. I want you to be aware of decisions, judges' right and opinions, and how they approach orders. I have to write a petition for contempt. I don't know what to ask for. I want you to tell me what type of remedies, or if this happened, I'm going to upload you my story,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to ask you what I should ask this judge for. Or
Oh, I love it.
if she's not reading, if a child's failing reading, she's not taking him to a tutor, and you're only a weekend dad or a summer dad, and you want to file a motion for custody based upon his lack of education, upload those facts and say, here's what I'm concerned about. I have to ask for a relief.
Mm-hmm.
My instinct is ask for is for a change in custody. What are my other options before I write this motion that this judge is likely to grant in this jurisdiction, in this location, based upon the fact pattern I'm going to read to you?
Mm-hmm.
And when you scratched your head about the motion that you read, I wanted to tell you my own story that's equally dramatic, and I had an equal head scratcher. But if you ask, look, I want to win. I want to have a chance here. I want to get what I'm looking for. I want to protect the child from this. What are the likely remedies I should ask for? Give me an aggressive, give me a neutral, and give me a conservative, different ways that I can go about wording this.
Mm-hmm.
To you.
Yeah, I
Over.
mean, it's again. I'm just sitting here going, why didn't I have this back then, right? And I did well. Don't get me wrong, but it
Because
could.
we didn't know each other back
Well,
then,
that too.
Dan.
Well, also AI didn't exist. Like I said,
Okay.
the internet was dial up at 2400 baud. But anyway, yeah, it's such powerful tools that are now available. But I want to kind of shift a little bit, but keep in this realm in the sense that you know, one of the areas that I often hear from guys who are considering representing themselves is something like modification of child support. You can learn that. I think, in fact, I tell guys, if you put a little effort in, that's easy to handle because the law is the law. I mean, as long as you know how to navigate it, right? But where I see guys, and I want to get your opinion, I will tell you mine first, and you could tell me I'm dead wrong, and I'm fine with it.
You're pretty close on everything you're talking about. So
Well,
keep
the
going. I'm
one
not worried
time
about
I will say you absolutely should not represent yourself is a false allegation. Under no circumstances. The minute it's announced, like if I were to go into a courtroom now and I'm representing myself and they throw an allegation out, I say to the judge, Your Honor, I no longer can represent myself. I want to recess to get an attorney because you're talking really, really serious, potentially criminal case. And I have seen guys that have screwed up big time that way. What's your thoughts in that particular situation, or just in general, like really difficult cases like that?
Yeah, I can answer. And here's what I would say. Yes, I agree with you wholeheartedly with just a minor qualification
Mm-hmm.
that you need that lawyer over your shoulder watching every step of the way. That much more you do. But the problem is a false allegation causes as much damage as most violent crimes. It's 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 designed a false allegation, depending upon the severity of the allegation, is designed to wipe you off, to wipe your reputation,
Mm-hmm.
wipe your record, wipe your job and your business reputation off your neighborhood, out of your state where you have to move and restart your entire life because an accusation is harmful in and of itself. You don't have to win. And Dan, that's what you were saying. That's the point you were making. I'm not going to go too much farther. Here is the catch, and here is the problem. That a false allegation is what I would call high conflict litigation, so it's 10 times more expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that much more important that you have the lawyer driving the ship, steering the boat, and directing you, being that captain, but you still should be doing 90% of the grunt work as your paralegal.
Oh, no, that I would agree with you. Where I'm thinking of specifically, Larry, is in the courtroom, right? Because again, I'll use the example I used earlier. If her attorney has, it's called a silver bullet. You know that, and I know that. But where they make an allegation that you abused the child, abused her, there's a whole gamut of them. If they introduce evidence that shouldn't be in there, as a layman, you may not know to object, right? That's why I say you absolutely need an attorney in the courtroom with you.
Well,
Now,
yeah.
I don't disagree with you at all that you still need to do your homework. Absolutely you do. But I'm telling you, man, you know better than I do what the rules of evidence are, and what mine is the thimble compared to your 50-gallon drum, right? It's you let the wrong piece of evidence in. Now, in theory, a judge is supposed to say, in family court, is supposed to say, no, that's not allowed. But you and I both know they don't do that shit. But that's why I say that, because it could turn criminal. I mean, if they're sitting there saying, well, he's essaying the child, because we can't use the word, and the judge or the child's advocate, if they've got a guardian ad litem or other, says, yeah, we're going to file a criminal case against you. Anything you said in that courtroom is used to get, we all know the Miranda. I am hardcore about it, and I could be wrong. I'll tell you that. But
You're not. You're right.
I tell
You're right.
guys, you stop it dead right then, and no judge is going to say, no, we're going to keep going. At least I don't think they would.
Right. So let me just empower your listeners and say, Dan, you're really spot on. And also, the one example I always use for not needing your own lawyer is exactly the one that you use for support modification.
Oh, those
because
are
if
easy.
you're W-2 and she's W-2, or both parties are W-2, it's a grid. There's very little you could modify.
It's a chart, basically, and they
It
just...
is, and
Yeah.
there's very little the judge can do, that lawyers can do, or there's very little discretion. Now, there are some exceptions to that for people who get tips for different expenses, how they get classified to all the extras and things like that. There might be some room for argument, discussion, and you might be able to ask a lawyer ahead of time how you handle that before you go in. But and Dan, it's funny that if I ever use an antithesis or opposite, I always say a false allegation of protection from abuse order or an allegation of crime is the one time that you're going to need someone every step, well, more frequently. And the hearings have more serious consequences. Something that you would have been able to do on your own, you can't when there's that false allegation.
Well, yeah,
So
or
I
like
agree.
if she goes and gets protective order, there's a whole different term depending on your state. But if she alleges domestic violence and gets an order, which by the way can be done ex parte, you won't even know it happened until they serve it on you. You need to get an attorney, because again, that could affect your custody down the road, and it's already has once she's got it. To be honest, right? If we're being honest about it, the minute she's got that order, it's called the silver bullet for a reason, because it works, right? So she goes, you're not even aware of it, right? For guys that don't know, all she's got to do, and I to very simplify it, is go to her attorney or herself, file a form, go into the court and go, I am afraid of him. That's it. That's all she needs. And basically, she's going to get handled an order, because no judge is going to go, yeah, I'm not going to do that, because they live in fear. And I've had judges tell me this, of not granting it, and then he kills her, right? And then they're in the news. But the minute that happens, you damn well better get an attorney, because you're in deep doo-doo, my friends. And guys try and navigate their way through it, and I wouldn't even try it. And I know the law better than most laymen, because you just don't know. And again, that doesn't mean you don't do the work and all that stuff. But things like child support, to me, you spend a couple of hours learning it, you can figure it out. That's ain't rocket science. But there are exceptions where I think you need to get an attorney, and a damn good one. That's the other thing, Larry. I want to get your opinion on this as an attorney. You get what you pay for. Would you agree with that?
No,
Okay.
as stated,
Oh,
as stated.
okay, good.
Because I mean, when you say you get what you paid for, please nobody think a lawyer is valuable because they're expensive, and that's all I mean by that, Dan.
Well, I mean in the sense that the way I look at it, you're right. I'm not disagreeing with you at all. In the
That's the
sense,
point that I was making. I
yeah.
wasn't undermining
No,
it.
no, no.
That's
I
the
totally respect
limited
it.
point
Yeah.
that I'm making. That
The,
you know,
the way I would
don't
put it
spend
is,
money and don't stop your investigation because you have the money and you hired an expensive lawyer. That is
yeah,
what
that
I
can
don't want.
backfire. But the other,
That's what I don't want
yeah.
people thinking.
But the other side of it is, if the going rate in your town is, I'll use $800, and you're talking with an attorney and they're going, yeah, I'll do it for $300 an hour. That should be setting off some huge red flags because there's a reason they're not charging the full 800 or whatever.
Sure. And let me help people who say, okay, how do you screen? How do you find the good lawyer? And why I'm afraid of you get what you pay for. If a lawyer, the lawyer who says, has the following words: limited scope, flat rate, unbundled attorney or unbundled services. That lawyer has taken time to become efficient
Mm-hmm.
because they're cost conscious and they're consumer focused. They know people have budgets and they don't want to exceed a budget and they want to help you make good decisions about them. Those are your trigger
Okay.
words.
Yeah, that's kind of, I would say that's what I had, right, with Karen, right? Is she was one of the most expensive, if not the most expensive attorney. But she would look me right in the eye and go, "You don't need me for this. Go handle it. Here's a few things to be aware of, right? But I know you've got this." Because normally I would fill out my own, violation of visitation or whatever. I would fill it out, send it to her, say, "Look this over," and we were emailing more than anything. She would shoot me back an email, so I'm paying her for roughly 6 minutes of time instead of 6 hours. And she'd say, "Dude, you got this. You don't need me for this." That's so it kind of that goes into what you're talking about. That's where you want to have that kind of a lawyer. What I'm saying, though, I guess I misspoke with the way I said it, is if a lawyer's dirt cheap compared to the norm, that's what I mean by you're not going to get what you pay for. If that is that a better way to put it?
One more qualification I'm going to
Go
add.
for it.
That I set the prices of this boot camp to a fraction to value.
Well, that's a
Be-
different scenario, though, right? Yeah.
it is, but I set my coaching service to fraction to a value as well because people can't afford this product now. So I consider myself a glorified legal aid. Like I said, a
Right.
glorified
Right.
social worker
Mm-hmm.
that has a law degree, so I can mark up a very little bit than what a social worker would charge. And I can offer the only thing I kind of am a lot less. I'm not that lobbyist, so that lobbying value is higher. A lawyer that sets a fee that low, you can say to the lawyer. What I recommend someone do is say, "Hey, the going rate in his area is X. Why are you, X minus 400? Just explain that to me
Right.
because I'm impressed. I'm thrilled that you're thinking of me. But why are you able? Why are you doing that? And listen what the lawyer has to say, and proceed accordingly. But but yeah, the one thing that people price in, lawyers will price in their donations. If they're donating 10 grand to the slate of judges, they want that money back. If they are spending weekends at conferences for the bench bar conference because they want to spend times away from their wives and kids just to get to know that judge better, that's a lobbying cost
It's a
because
business. They're running a
it
business.
it is. So that's part of why lawyers charge more, and that's value. A
It
lawyer
is.
who shows up in the bar association website is and it has something to do with judicial retention and judicial rating committee and things like that. That lawyer has got power,
Mm-hmm.
and they want to and they're charging for that. But if you don't see that, then you can still say, "Hey, who do you like?" You can have why is tell me what I'm getting, or there's other ways to ask, and just look at the website and upload it and ask ChatGPT what it tell ask ChatGPT what it means.
Well, it's funny because again, I love going back to my attorney because she was awesome. But the other side of it, so she was more than double what my ex's attorney was, hourly fee. And my ex ended up paying more than I did because he was a churner. He would find reasons to have billable hours. And that's what Karen would say to me is he's a crap attorney. He's cheap, but he's making it up by overbilling in other ways, right? And so just be aware of that. That's all I'm saying. Is
No, and that's very fair, and that's why I said the way to guard against that, Dan, is the those keywords: limited scope,
yeah, that goes
flat
back.
rate,
Do your own
unbundled,
yeah, do
unbundled
your
attorney.
own work, and you can protect yourself from that. I want to shift another topic that I hear. False allegations probably is number one I'm hearing right now is that guys are dealing with, but right behind it is parental alienation. It is going crazy from what my audience is telling me. All right, which I understand it's a limited scope of people, but it's very controversial. I say this, anybody who's a regular viewer of mine knows that I've dealt with it both as a child and as a parent and all the damage that it caused then. But it seems to be bubbling up, and I think one of the issues I don't even know, one issue's not the right word. One of the things that's happening, I think, is the courts never used to recognize it or rarely did, but now they're starting to. What are you seeing with that? Because as I said, it's the people that I coach, the people that reach out to me, it's percolating more and more. Not to the level of false allegations, but it ain't far from it. What's your thoughts on that?
Sure. So I'm going to answer it this way: that I see really the same clientele that you see,
Mm-hmm.
Dan, as an influencer. I have the Law Center YouTube channel, and I get people asking me about this all the time. So um, it's a jurisdiction by jurisdiction, judge by judge situation. I guess I can describe the different areas or counties, judges. I can describe them in categories. One category is don't ever use the word parental alienation in my courtroom. It's hogwash.
There's a
Get
lot of
out.
them like that.
Get out.
Yeah.
I'm not. It is. It's a. But it's an attitude,
Mm-hmm.
and it's something that a judge will verbalize, or all the lawyers know. Hey, this judge, you better not use that language. Now, what that means is you have to translate, and it's kind of the very similar thing to what I explained when I was talking about the self-represented litigant that had to translate into a different language from client-centered to child-centered.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of the same thing. So if you have a case where you are being poison, when your child is fed divorce poison, which is another term for parental alienation. There's some language for you to use,
Mm-hmm.
which was a book by Richard Warshak that saved my relationship with my child. I'll get choked up if I keep talking about it. And it saved it. It was a good result, but it was still traumatic to go through. So you just say, do you know? Um, it's parent child refusal or child refusing a parent, and you use language like that rather than or brainwashing is an acceptable translational term,
Mm-hmm.
and you actually can use the same experts, and the expert will know the difference in the jurisdiction, and then the expert won't use the word parental alienation, will be smart enough to steer away, but they'll be able to say, hey, I'm a scientist, I've run studies where there's a certain type of behavior that I've studied and reviewed, and I can make the following observations about those types of cases that I reviewed, and I'm seeing the same pattern that is coming from undue influence parent. Um, and that explains the dynamic. It's not because this other parent deserves to be estranged from the child. So that's how that expert would handle it. So that's one answer. The second thing is you said false allegations and parental alienation. When there's a false allegation made in the context of a parental alienation case, and I'll just use that language just for ease so I don't have to keep translating.
Right.
The uh, One of the experts, his name is Alan Blotke in Tennessee, says that there are alienating beliefs behind false allegations. False allegations are made because that parent is trying to
Mm-hmm.
separate the bond between parent and other child for their own high conflict reasons. And the other thing, and this is always a high conflict individual, or mostly, it's very common to have, let me word this precisely now. It's very common to have a high conflict individual without going into diagnoses, a conflict individual behind false allegations and allegations of parental alienation. So I hope that answers your question to a
It
point we can get
does.
deeper if you
Yeah.
want.
I mean, it's they do go hand in hand. I completely agree with that, and it's. But what I find interesting, Larry, is when I was going through it as a child, which is 50 plus years ago, no one knew what it was really, right? Go to the 90s. Gardner came out with his stuff. There's a whole bunch of stuff came out. Some people say it's hogwash, all that stuff. But at least it was being talked about then. And it got a name, if you will, parental alienation, which, like you said, in some courtrooms, you don't ever bring that up. Knowing, because I had to deal with it as a parent, and knowing what I knew then, my perspective now is it has changed. There is more awareness of it. There's more judicial acceptance that it occurs. I guess the way I'll put that. What are you seeing in general? Because again, I have limited knowledge on it.
So here's what I see. I can answer that with specificity. That there is a group called the Parental Alienation Study Group, which are lawyers, doctors, scientists, researchers who have all banded together, and they've written dozens and dozens of books about parental alienation, to where that if you present an expert and you explain it to the judges have, there's a strong chance that judge is going to listen and really strongly consider it. There's also another political movement by the anti-domestic violence lobby, and it's funny how this kind of broke down gender, you know, broke down to
I
gender
know where
lines
you're going.
because
Yeah.
men are physically stronger, so women are more afraid of a high conflict man that may use his strength to intimidate, hurt, or coerce, things like that. Women, on the other hand, are very sensitive to the fact that a false allegation of physical violence or coercion again or brainwashing the child usually appear in the same case, because that's how the issues of law, I won't go into specifics,
No, I
but
get
to
it.
win a case for divorce, I'm sorry, to win a case for domestic violence or parental alienation, you have cross allegations of severe misconduct, whether it's the man, physical strength, or the woman poisoning the child's ears or whispering bad words into the ears. And it exists in every case. Like, it's how the law is written,
Right.
that the elements to prove a parental alienation is the absence of violence, and domestic abuse case is the presence of violence. So someone's making a false allegation. If it's black and white, someone's making a false allegation in every case. Now, there are some gray, because there might be both bad parenting. One's a little, intimidating, and she's saying that, talking about things the child shouldn't hear about her own experience, which is a form of parental alienation. And maybe he just doesn't manage his emotions well, so they both think they're innocent, they're both throwing dirt against each other, and that's a lot of what I see that's going on.
Yeah, I do too, Larry. It's and that's where, if you can, you got to step back for a moment and take the emotion out of it. You triggered a question in my brain. One I've asked lawyers before. When you are representing someone and you have these type of situations, how do you as a lawyer, because you're required to not present false information. I don't know the terminology for it, but as a lawyer, if you're looking at it going, yeah, she's making these claims, I ain't buying it, but you still have to. You're bound to represent your client to the best of your ability. How do you reconcile that, both from the legal perspective but also from the personal one?
That's a great question, Van. Thank you for asking it, because it lets me to get talk about some concepts that I was going to wanted to share anyway. So this is my point: the family court is dead on arrival. It's a broken system, because the common law, the system comes from England, Great Britain, old hundreds and hundreds of years ago, that it was designed, something called the adversarial system. Doesn't mean necessarily you have to fight. Well, it gets turned into that,
Right.
because you have competing viewpoints. You have that viewpoint, the other viewpoint, and then they each present competing viewpoints. That's the adversarial system that was designed to prevent the state from interrogating, from squeezing out false confessions. That was the birth of the adversarial system, that you don't just have the state, you have a defense, so people don't get falsely accused. To bring that into the family court system is crazy, because what we don't realize, since the institution of no fault divorce, or the complete destruction of the American family or the global family. It's not just the American, it's a worldwide issue. Is that when a family separates in divorce, your interest should not be adverse. You're still a family that's dysfunctional.
Yes. Even
You
though
don't have contrary interests, son of a gun. And it's a system that's built upon conflict where there should be no conflict.
I'm shaking my head while you're talking because in
Should be
criminal,
nodding. Should be
well,
nodding the
I'm
head. Nodding
shaking
the
my
head.
head in agreement is really
I
what
know
I'm
what
doing.
you meant. That's right.
I mean, in the case of criminal law, absolutely it needs to be adversarial. No question in my mind. Family law, it absolutely should not be adversarial because the ones who are going to get hurt are the two litigants and, more importantly, the child. No one wins in family court that way, right?
So
And
to further,
they'll
go,
argue,
go
oh,
ahead.
it's civil court and it doesn't work that way. Oh, bullshit.
Correct. Well, it's because the attorney ethics are designed not to judge your client, but you're dealing with an emotional destruction of a entity, which is the family. And when the family is destroyed, that individual has trauma where their behavior isn't rational. So a lawyer that sees irrational behavior is supposed to be a zealous advocate of someone who doesn't even know what they want
Yeah,
because they're blinded by pain and trauma. So we have to rethink ethics if we're not going to rethink our court system.
and the problem is, Larry, as you well know, there are a lot of non-ethical attorneys out there, and I mean, there's more than a few that I know of attorneys that 90% of the cases they have are silver bullet cases. There's no way that's possible. You know,
Well, it's even worse than that because you said 90% are unethical, but
well, in
the
that
lack
particular
of
case,
ethics.
yeah,
I'm with you. I'm with you.
yeah.
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But you're saying so many are unethical. But let me just break this down. There's two things that are unethical: to deliberately have a scorched earth. Hey, my client, right or wrong, my client. I'm going to burn the earth down for my client. But there's another thing that to just not scrutinize or to do it by mistake, to think, you know what, forget scorched earth. If my client wants it, I have a right to pursue this and not look further. When you're in a position to help a client from engaging in
Hmm.
destructive behavior. So this isn't taught in law school.
Well,
And this is what I mean is that there's a problem with the system because if we taught our lawyers to think in family court, to analyze and to look at these elements, because a father who is calling for parental alienation or her wife who is alleging abuse, when there's gray, you actually do your client a best friend in the world service by recommending that they go to therapy and really think about whether
yeah.
they want the relief that they're looking for.
Well, again, we could spend hours on this, but what one of the things that I hear from guys all the time is I don't understand why her attorney is doing things like he knows she's lying. And I'm not saying the guys where it is gray. I'm saying where there's irrefutable proof, really. Like she'll allege he did something to her, and they already have proof that he wasn't even in the town. That, but her attorney will keep pressing it. My ex's attorney, he loved to churn, right? And he would just throw shit at the wall because he was trying to make money. And she couldn't see it. My attorney could, I could, the judge could, right? He had no ethics. But when you're up against that type of thing, you know, we talk about things like, because I hear from guys all the time, well, what about my rights? What about the Constitution? I'm sure you hear this stuff too. I always say, dude, doesn't really apply in family court. I mean, I hate to say it that way, but it really doesn't. Due process is a joke in family court. The evidence being, as we talked about earlier, ex parte orders of domestic violence protection orders. Where you can have your life destroyed based on her word, and you have no opportunity to fight back until potentially weeks or months later, and the damage is already done. So, I mean, kind of, where are your thoughts with that? Because I hear from guys all the time. What about the Constitution or
So let me address
that?
that in the way you asked it. So that's because it's easy to focus on it The family court statutes, no fault, or a lot of these codes were back in the 60s. We didn't used to have divorce, and all of a sudden the amount of divorces, I don't know, increased by 10 to 20, whatever the statistics were, they're awful. And then you had all these codes, and they're not. So people figure this out when it happens to them.
Yeah.
And it's not constitutional. Normally, these laws are challenged right when the law is passed. So there's still a system to go back to. So right now, when people have figured out, yes, it's an unconstitutional system, it's a system that says we're going to suspend the Constitution because the state has an interest in, well, here's the way the state writes it. People know that it's applied more like an oppressive government. So let's not get into that for the moment. Let's just
Hmm.
talk about the way you asked. It has been unconstitutional, and it's one of those systems that are, to draw a cliche, too big to fail, because you are going to have chaos. You can't get rid of it unless you build something different. So I want all your listeners to stop. You can make a constitutional argument because it might sound good, but you're not going to win it. It's persuasive
Right.
because you're saying, wait a minute, you're stretching so far, you're violating my rights. So say it, but please don't make that your ultimate conclusion. Uh, be, uh, because it's an unconstitutional system. The judge's like, yeah, I know, I've been issuing unconstitutional orders my whole career. If he's a scholar, he or she, excuse me,
Right.
is a scholar, they can see that. So I guess that is the point that I'm going to make. It's an unconstitutional system to begin with.
It's designed that way, right?
Right.
It has been, like you said, most people would say from the beginning, but really in the 60s and 70s when they started pushing no fault divorce and all this
Sure.
stuff, there was a ton of change brought to the family
Right.
court system.
Oh, that's the
That's
other thing. So it's unconstitutional also because what you're doing is you're voiding a contract. The no-fault system is an absolute aberration. I mean, or it's a complete tragedy of trampling on rights because it's the one place where a contract isn't actually a
and that's
contract.
it, right? The marital contract was destroyed because it's the only contract now where one party can end it and benefit by ending it,
Unilaterally and not
and
have damages to pay.
exactly,
So you can break it, but you should be able to be sued for damages for violating that
exactly.
contract. And it was kind of lazy for the state to do that. They had the reasons for it, but I actually think society progress will be readopting, or people I believe should enter, smart, good, Catholic or religious,
Hmm.
whatever religion it is, should be entering something called covenant marriages, where you allow the fault system, where
Hmm.
you make it harder to get out and you allow the fault system to bring some type of penalty. Otherwise, it's absolutely a system that invites chaos and an absolute violation of rights.
And it's interesting because I think you're starting to hear them talk, some politicians, about bringing back fault divorce. I think they've realized they opened up a can of worms they didn't realize they were opening up, and
It's a failed experiment. It's a failed
it's
experiment. It's
marriage.
destroyed society.
It
And
has, and
the
it
first time, as a lawyer, the first time I heard it, the person said to me that the person who said to me, I thought, you are really crazy. Until I realized they're not. Until I realized that actually there's such wisdom. The thing is, we've been living with it so long, we're so used to it that we don't think there's any other way because we're so bad at our relationships, which is the other, the best. My goal is the best way to stay out of family court is learn how to love the one you're with.
and do your work ahead of time before you get married to make sure they are the one you want to be with.
That's right. That's right.
We're starting to run out of time, Larry, but the thing I want to really touch on, to make sure that we touch on, is how do we effing fix this? I mean,
Yeah.
what can we do? Because it is broken. Some people say blow the whole thing up. I don't think that's realistic, but
Nor do I want them to. I don't
no,
want them to
right.
blow it up because I wouldn't have a relationship with my son without family court.
Yeah, I
So
mean, it does a lot of good, right?
I'm very grateful for the court. It's so ironic what a great judge I had and what a great lawyer I had. I posted something online critical of family court, and the lawyer was so angry. And I was like, "Yeah, it's because you're one of the good ones. I'm not talking to you."
But what I mean, we talk about things like shared parenting, which I know you are too, a huge advocate for, and all that. What are, let's say, two or three things that you think we, as the public, should either be pushing for, advocating for, can do to kind of at least get the ball rolling to fix this?
So I did do a video, 5 ways to reform family court, and they're all they center around transparency and accountability. We need better merit selection for our judges. One, um, better bar rating systems. That's how you can get that transparency. You need video cameras in the courtrooms that can be accessed by the litigants only,
Amen to that.
that can be accessed by the litigants only, not reporters. You need to track judicial patterns better based upon factual scenarios so you can address what types of judges are forming what patterns. You need better disclosure for campaign. There should be an affirmative disclosure. It shouldn't have to be available upon request where you're already antagonizing the judge by challenging the judge's integrity. So that should be listed on the wall of the courtroom. All the lawyers who have donated so much, which, to the judge, which will naturally cause the donations to be reduced, and you'll control costs. You'll control that type of corruption, because if you donate to a judge, you can't practice in front of them. You're going to have better. You're going to have better. You'll take care of a slew of problems there. So I may have forgotten one that is just not coming into my head, but I
Oh,
do
that's fine.
think that you need fault divorce back in, or some of those fault system guidelines back in. I think you need shared parenting. I think a presumption. Let's be specific here so people don't. What that means is a presumption of equal shared parenting where there is no abuse in the relationship, not
Right.
allegations, but
Actual
abuse,
proven abuse. Right.
proven abuse. You need support reform to catch child support and spousal support to catch up to the modern trends. You have a system of guidelines. The amount of guidelines are written on an antiquated and a proven false or proven inaccurate, let me not overstate, somewhat inflated numbers that do work in the cases of abandonment, but you also have to remove financial incentives that um, encourage conflict. So that's support. And then, as we already mentioned, I think you have to change the ethics in family court. You really have to recognize that the family doesn't have adverse, or shouldn't have, ideally, adverse interests or an adversarial system, so that you could have more social workers, therapists participate in the custody system where lawyers' ethics are different. And it shouldn't be, you should only get a lawyer after mediation fails. A lawyer should not be allowed in the system until a judge or someone finds a conflict, and mediation should be doing 90% of these divorces, not the
Right.
10% or 5% that's there. There's my nutshell. I
No,
hope I was
and
succinct.
I'm a big fan for mediation. A lot of people hate mediation, but I'm like, that should be your first try, right? If you can get, it may not work. That's fine. But you know what? You can save yourself a ton of stress, time, money, all of it by at least trying it. Because
The
there's been so I know of people that never thought it would work and later on said, "Oh my God, it was the best thing I ever did."
Well, the problem is that the lawyers are the gateway to the system, but because they're business people, they're losing thousands of dollars
Yeah,
each
that's
time. So they have a they have an disincentive to use mediation, and an incentive to scare the pants out of people from entering those agreements. But you really have to consult with the lawyer. So I really tell the clients that, if you can think of your broken relationship with your co-parent as you're still family. You're just
right.
going to be, you're not having sex anymore and you're living apart, but you're still connected by that child.
And
So the
will be
child's
for
interests
life.
and the child's interests are more important than yours, so it's not adversarial. So
Right.
stop thinking about it that way.
Yeah, I mean that you're kind of I think giving me the answer to what my question was coming up was going to be, which is if you could snap your fingers and change one thing about the family court system overnight, what would it be? And is it
The
fair to say the
adversary
adversarial?
Eliminate
Yeah.
the adversarial system with having more therapists, having more social workers, and a modification of judicial ethics, and a mandatory mediation. So really, that's a whole bunch of focus to one thing, less adversarial. The laws surrounding the guidelines should be this is not an adversarial system, and traditional civil laws are modified.
Yeah, I mean, the argument I make, because I agree with you, is by making it adversarial, you're not making it the best interest of the child ever.
That's right.
You know,
Ever. That's right.
ever. So, all right, we do have to wrap things up. Larry, so much information, but you have a much more that we could ever possibly cover to offer. So, how can people find you, follow you, find out about your course, all that stuff?
Sure. So my website is thelawcenter.net. The boot camp, the Family Court Custody Bootcamp is thelawcenter.net/bootcamp, close slash. And that is, it has a custom chat embedded in that program, or at least my son is working on that as I speak, and so it'll be secure in there. I want it secure, but I've duplicated my brain. I
Okay.
have put the entire boot camp into a chat so you can talk to me without having to pay an hourly rate in that boot camp. And I have done 47 videos of all the leading research scientists. They have given me their books. I have made videos and I've taken the transcripts and uploaded it into that
Hmm.
custom chat about parental alienation, false allegations, and things like that. So really, it's the best practices to helping yourself as a paralegal or a self-represented litigant. My YouTube channel, which is the videos for anyone who doesn't want to pay, the course is $250 with a discount code, or 249 is
That, wait a
299
minute, I
without it.
gotta stop you. That's a steal, my friend. I want you
Listen,
people think about the $250 as opposed to $800 for an attorney.
I
Hello.
just want my costs back. Listen,
Wow.
it's really social work. Listen, with this chat, I think it's worth several thousands. But like, look, I really just want the
Yeah.
cost back and the time and my expenses. It's
I
really
mean,
all
if
I'm
I
trying
if
to ask.
and I'm not doing this to because you're standing in front of me, but people, let me state this unequivocally, and I'm not doing it because Larry's a friend or he's in front of me. $250 investment is that investment is I guarantee you is going to save you thousands of dollars in the long run. Promise you that. I guarantee it. He can't say that. I can. Okay.
Well, I can say that it did take a year of my life to produce. That I was doing, the time that we spent in court, Dan, or when we were self-represented litigants, I spent 40 hours a week for 9 months putting that puppy
Think
together.
about that. Yeah. I mean, like I said,
Putting that together.
I was not joking. I spent 60 hours a week studying this stuff.
Yeah.
And just that if I did 1 week of that would have saved me. I mean, 60 hours of my time. Back in the day, the money I was earning, that's six thousand
Yeah.
dollars. I mean,
So look, anyone who buys it will get all future upgrades. And let me just say, the problem is marketing. People don't understand what it is.
right.
So it's just going to sit there, and all that time I put in isn't going to help people. I'd rather have it into places like legal aid where poor people can use it who can't afford it,
Mm,
that kind of thing. But right now, if you are paying a lawyer, guys, if you're paying a lawyer tens of thousands of dollars because you said, take care of me, I don't even want to think about this. You are instead of buying like a good Honda, you are buying a Rolls Royce, but only getting a Honda.
right.
You are paying
That's
a
a good way to
half a
put
million
it.
dollars for a car that runs like a Hyundai.
Great,
So,
great
the
point there.
course, the Family Court Custody Bootcamp is designed so that you are paying 250 and you're paying lawyers 10 cents on the dollar because you know
And
everything that lawyer knows. That's the concept. I'm intelligent. I put a lot of time in it. I was diligent about it, and I want to help you save your family because I don't want you to go through what Dan and I went through.
yeah, it's again, guys. I'm not saying this to shill for him. Okay, I mean I'm blown away at the price. I'm not gonna lie
I'm
to
not going to be making anything. Listen, I'm not
you.
going to
I'm
be making
like,
anything
because
anyway. It's
and well,
200.
let me be upfront. I had no idea what he charged until he said that. And Larry, you can back that up. You never told me.
No, I didn't.
And
I
if you
didn't
had
because I
told me it was $9.99, I would have
I
said it
don't
was a
want you to.
steal.
I don't want people to think that I'm business minded here because this is. Listen, I was lucky in court. This is me giving back.
Yeah.
it's me giving thanks because I know
Yeah,
what
it's
happens to these
amazing.
parents.
I mean, the business owner in me is going, "What the fuck are you doing,
No,
dude?"
I know, but listen, I'm going to keep it this price until you guys all discover it. It blows up.
Yeah. Well,
Then I'll
no, I
donate
mean,
it to some low cost places or
but
something.
no,
But
what you're
take
doing. You're
advantage of it.
doing it out of the kindness of your heart. You do need to cover your costs. That's fair. But that yeah. All I'm going to say is thank you for doing that
Yeah.
because resources like that are invaluable. And I was not kidding. It can save you tens, potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars. Just having even if you're represented by a lawyer, just having the knowledge that you're going to get from it, you can sit there and go, yeah, I don't need to file that, or I need to do that, or whatever. There's a whole list of scenarios. So,
So
go
I
ahead.
want to make another point, Dan. Advocates, I ran the course live and I had about 16 people take it, and 10 of which were advocates. So even if you're not in family court, but you have a generous heart and you want to help people and you want to coach people, I call it a coach's training course. I call it a divorce court custody advocate custody training course. Take it yourself, steal my brain, steal everything I know. Go ahead. I'm trying to clone me so you will also help the people that you would want to help, because it's we're in the stone ages in divorce court right now, and in
Great way.
domestic
Yep.
relations court. We're going to look back, and this is going to be look like doctors curing people with leeches, putting them on your
That's
blood, thinking you're going to. That is where we are in
that's
society right now.
that exact analogy I've made before.
Yeah, but it was because it's a powerful one and
It
it's a
is.
strong one, and that's why I'm not being a business here. You've got to fix it first before
Right.
you can be a business, because it's a crisis. It's a human. Uh, uh, I don't want to use wrong over dramatic words, but it's a crisis and it needs to be fixed. And the other thing is, if you even don't have the $250, I have the Law Center YouTube channel where the stuff is put out like a explainer videos that are like reading short little books, because they're the horn books, or it's a how-to up there for free, and I've organized it the best I can so that you can follow the self-represented resources. The Law Center is the name of the channel. If you can't find it with the first search, then put DeMarco and it'll come right up.
I will put links down in the show notes for all of it. So you won't even have to go looking. All you got to do is go down into the show notes and click on the links, guys. Larry, all I can say, my friend, is thank you so much for coming on, and thank you for that course too, by the way. But amazing, valuable information you've shared with the audience, and I want people to go follow you, and you guys, you need to. A lot of valuable information. I have seen his YouTube channel. Go watch his videos. Even if you're not dealing with family court, as you kind of mentioned, you can learn a lot from it. Any final thoughts, Larry, before we go?
Yes, Dan, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you giving me this opportunity to share my journey and my pet project, my life work, or my my signature program. So I can't thank you enough. I appreciate you, and to all your listeners who are going through any type of separation. Hey, we're praying for you, and try and put the guns down and try and find love through it, and for the sake of your kids.
Amen to that, my friend, and thank you again for coming on.
My pleasure.
All right, we're going to go ahead and wrap up the show. Guys, a lot of valuable information in there. Larry's an awesome guy. And that's why this podcast exists, right? And my goal is to share information from creators and people like Larry so that you can go and learn about what they're talking about, what they're offering, all of that stuff. And I encourage you to share this with anyone and everyone you can, because again, it may not affect you directly, but your buddy down the street, your neighbor, your coworker might be going through family court or about to, and you may not even know it. And they could really benefit from something like this. So by sharing it, you're helping everyone to learn more about the various issues that men and boys face and bringing attention to them. All right. If you've enjoyed the show, do me the favor. You know the drill. Give me that thumbs up. Give me that like. Give me the heart. Aww. And don't forget, if you are not a subscriber, and if you're not, why the hell not? Make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. New podcasts come out every week, and new videos come out every single day, or at least unless I forget one. So, but I'm pretty good about it. So make sure you subscribe and come back to the channel and get even more information and education on the issues that men and boys face. All right, we're going to wrap it up with that. Guys, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Men Need to Be Heard.